Hello, Oddities! Welcome back to another episode of Midnight Curiosities. I'm Curator Raquel.
And I'm Curator Warbeauty.
Coming at you live from planet Earth.
Okay. That's not wrong.
It's not a lie. It's not a lie, yeah. I've lied a couple times about my location.
That's true. Only a few of them have not been real.
Yeah, just a couple.
just a few.
But this one is real, and I am reporting it at you from the planet Earth.
Good.
Or am I? You don't have a way to actually prove that.
We don't at all, actually. The burden of proof is on them.
Right.
Wait, no, that's backwards. The burden of proof is on us, isn't it?
Not. The burden of proof falls on both parties.
Listen, we don't believe in real science, so the burden of proof is on everybody else but me.
Oh man, that should be the tagline for the show. We don't believe in real science. Wasn't it just like last episode where like, it's all science, guys. That's always the answer. It's just science.
It's all science, but not real science, just fake science.
Right. Make up your own brand of science and choose to believe in it exclusively.
We could just make up science.
That sounds like a lot of work, though.
Right, because then it's all like, now I gotta, like, find things to say to like, back up my point.
That's true. I wish more people would have that mindset that you have to back up what you say with proof.
Because, like, you can't prove that I'm not part of the reptilian agenda, but I also can't prove to you that I am part of the reptilian agenda. So it's kind of like Schrodinger's reptilian agenda, you know?
Good. There's a girl that I work with, and she has this, like, on-again, off-again boyfriend, and she refers to him as Schrodinger because he is both her boyfriend and not her boyfriend.
That's... okay.
Yeah.
He is both alive and dead simultaneously.
I guess so. Yeah, I guess so.
I'll be honest, I don't know how to segue into...
I was literally just thinking I don't know how to segue this. I guess, like...
Okay, so...
Speaking of fake sciences...
Speaking of fake sciences, everybody knows that psychic phenomena, that's a fake science.
Right. I mean, everything we discuss on this show is a fake science.
Well, obviously, because we don't discuss real science here. But
you're actually, there are some people that would maybe disagree with you on that psychic phenomena could be interpreted as a real science.
I'm actually one of those people. I think it is a real science, but the vast majority of people, even scientists, well, public scientists, say that it's a pseudoscience, it's a fake science. But what's fascinating is...
You could be wrong.
Right, is that we could be wrong. You never know.
What's fascinating about it?
Well, it's just fascinating because it's science that has been funded by governments. Now, oh, buddy. Oh, here we go. Conspiracy.
Okay, alright. Before you get into this is our topic for the week. So we will be diving into conspiracy a little bit.
So do we give like people like a conspiracy trigger warning?
I would like to let them know what they're getting into.
May include the excessive need of a tinfoil hat.
Right. Well, I just want people to know that this particular episode, like generally we have a very scientific approach and a lot of our things can be researched and backed up, but this one is... I mean, you can research it and you can read the same articles that we read.
It's researchable, it's back-upable, and it's based in actual science.
Alright, let's get into it then.
Alright. So I don't know if you guys have heard, but recently, as in this month, February of 2021, the CIA finally declassified Project Gateway.
Yes, and I know that in our circles, we heard about it rather quickly, but a lot of people may not have heard about this.
Right, so just like last year when the Pentagon declassified UFO information and photos and no one cared, this is another one people aren't going to care about, and it's called Project Gateway. So This is a covert psychic phenomena research that the CIA was conducting in the 80s.
Bro, this goes so much deeper than that, though, because not only was the CIA investigating psychic phenomena, they were like employing psychics and using psychic phenomena for like investigative purposes.
Right. So this would have been, the height of the Cold War. And so everyone kind of knows the sort of 60s and 70s experiments that the government did with LSD, and they had that whole thing, and they would like train Jedis, and they made a movie with George Clooney about it.
Who's that?
Oh, I don't remember, but there's a movie with George Clooney in it, The Men Who Stare at Goats.
I'm sorry?
Okay, there's a movie about government psychic alternative phenomena, and it's a movie called The Men Who Stare at Goats, or Men Who Stare at Goats, or whatever.
Okay.
And it was basically it's
kind of a misleading title.
Well, no, because they would stare at goats to, like, try to blow them up.
Cool.
Right, and they did this, they did all of these meditation exercises, and there was LSD involved in this program, but it's essentially the story of Army volunteers who went into this covert Army special ops, special forces, like, little group, and they did psychic warfare was their specialty.
Okay.
So, with this in mind, and keep in mind, the American government has had a long, documented history of employing these kinds of people, of doing this type of research. And of course, like I said, we know about the stuff from the 60s and 70s when it was really kicking off with acid and psilocybin and everything. But what people don't realize is that the CIA, the government, just not via the Army at this point, the CIA picked up that trajectory. And in the early 1980s, there was a classified report on a technique called the gateway experience.
Yes.
Now, what is the gateway experience?
They were investigating things like out-of-body experiences and astral projection, as well as, like, psychic intellect. They were investigating how... Well, the CIA, for our non-American listeners, is the...
Central Intelligence.
Yeah, Central Intelligence Agency. And their job is to basically gather information. And so they were using psychics to gather information telepathically. And it was a very risque, very, like, non-scientific way of going about it, especially for the CIA, which follows a lot of very strict protocols.
And even for our American listeners, I want to clarify government agencies. So I've worked for the government, I've worked in the military, and the CIA is interested in foreign affairs, and the FBI is interested in domestic affairs. So people don't really get them confused. FBI, domestic affairs, CIA, foreign affairs. So if someone's attacking America, and if people are trying to come onto our soil, or something is happening on American territories and American properties, that is the FBI. When it comes to investigating governments that have nothing to do with ours, and matters that are not directly related to our government in some way, that would be the CIA.
Yes. So Project Gateway, I believe it started with a book that was written in, like, the 60s about out-of-body experiences, which then started circulating around intelligence communities and made its way to the CIA.
Yes. There was, in the 50s, this guy named Robert Monroe. He was some big radio broadcasting executive. He began to produce evidence that specific sound patterns could have identifiable effects on human capabilities, including things like alertness, sleepiness, and expanded states of consciousness.
Right. Which is interesting because, like, we know that today to be true.
Exactly. So this is very early in psychology, kind of.
Yeah.
And in modern psychology and in modern brain study, we don't even have MRI capabilities at this point. We have electrodes and just really intelligent people.
Right.
So the Gateway, Project Gateway, and the Gateway Process Report, that was supposed to include, like, remote viewing and bending of time-space.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so when I was reading up on this, the remote viewing is what really fascinated me.
Which is why this was a CIA operation, because they were using it to spy on other countries.
Right. But not, like, directly. They were hiring psychics who would project themselves out of their bodies or travel to these other places psychically or astrally to gather information. But the scary part is that they were right, like, several times.
Well, right. So in the 50s, this guy, Monroe, is continuing to study with something called sleep learning. And basically, it's a form of hypnosis in your sleep that enhances your ability to learn while you're deep in your REM cycle, right?
Correct.
And he then discovered that he could have out-of-body experiences using this exact same pattern of things he was doing.
Right.
So that's when, in 1971, this guy who's been doing this study, he publishes Journeys Out of the Body. And
yep, that's the one. That's the book.
This book is credited with popularizing the term out-of-body experience.
Yeah. Journeys out of the body. So he was taking little vacays in his own mind.
Right. So in 71, this book comes out. And in 1972, a classified report goes through the military and intelligence communities that says the Soviet Union is pouring money into research involving what's called extrasensory perception, which is called ESP, which is psychic senses, and psychokinesis for espionage purposes. Because remember, this is Cold War. This is the early 80s, you know, Gorbachev tearing down that wall.
I do want to clarify real quick. We are reading from a Vice article written by Thoby Champion.
Yes, so this is where the kind of the big hub of this information was compiled, was in this Vice article. And you can, of course, find more on this, but I think this was the most well-written piece. And Vice typically does that, I will say.
Yeah.
Big fan of the way Vice sort of conglomerates all of this information into well-condensed, understandable material.
Yes, but I just didn't want any, like, plagiarism thing.
Right.
They do cite their sources, so even if you don't think that Vice is a credible source, there are references to many other sources, and you can get this information straight from the CIA itself.
Yes, so these were declassified documents. So in 72, this is when, you know, everyone's concerned that the Soviet Union is studying psychic phenomena. Now, keep in mind that the government at this point has already been studying psychic phenomena well from the 50s and 60s.
Right.
So governments are not blind or stupid to the fact that these phenomena are happening. They are just trying to pour money into weaponizing it against other countries.
Right.
So
75.
Right. In like the mid-70s now, 1975, this guy Monroe, he registered the first of several patents concerning audio techniques designed to stimulate brain functions until the left and the right hemispheres became synchronized.
Do you have any examples of these audio techniques, like binaural beats?
Yeah, actually, we're going to get into the science of that, because I've actually been studying that for a very long time. So when this report was declassified and this came out and this article came out, this was actually a lot of stuff I had to do and I had to know in order to be a certified master hypnotist. So basically, Monroe, bless his soul, he claims that his techniques and his ideas can be used to promote mental well-being or trigger an altered state of consciousness.
Okay, both of which could be true.
Right. I mean, they definitely are true, but at this point in 1975, we just don't have the science to back this up.
Sure, it's kind of a big claim at the time.
Now, I want people to keep in mind when they're hearing this is that we have mankind and religion and shamans and priests and clergy and all of these different backgrounds of people and monks, and from the east to the west to the north to the south. This is something that mankind has known for thousands of years. Thousands of years we have been practicing this. So I think what's really misleading about the Gateway Project is that you guys are going to hear this and everyone's going to read this and think this is brand new information that has been kept from them for so long. But what has happened is that in Western society, we have taken what is just intuitive ancient knowledge and we've kind of trivialized it. So now when people are presented with the hardcore facts and the hardcore science with instruments that we understand in modern day, the results are the same as the Buddhist monks who have been doing it for, 10,000 years in Tibet. The techniques, the way we do it, it's literally the same thing. Now, of course, there are variations depending on where you are, what your practice is, the culture, etc. But at the end of the day, these results have all been the same as they have been for thousands of years. So this is not brand new information.
It's not. And you also have to take into consideration that men, especially American men, tend to have a habit of finding things that are more obscure or in different cultures and modernizing it and republicizing it as this new cool thing, even though it may be new to American culture, it's not new to any other cultures.
Right. So,
and that just is what it is. We can't change that. It's not right, but we can't change it.
So now getting into the late 70s, early 80s, you have this Army veteran, this guy, Joseph McMoneagle.
McGonagall?
Yeah, it sounds like McGonagall, but it's McMoneagle.
McMoneagle. Okay.
He contributes to 450 remote viewing missions under this Project Stargate.
Now, what is Project Stargate? So we were talking about Project Gateway.
Okay, Project Stargate is basically the same thing. It was the
Project Stargate is more specifically using psychics to remote view other places.
Yes. And so this guy,
more
this
specifically
Joseph,
than investigating psychic phenomena in general, Stargate was to use psychics for espionage purposes.
Okay, yeah, so let me clarify here a little bit, because Project Stargate was exactly like Curator Raquel said. You're using psychics to remote view, and you're doing all of these, you're trying to study psychic phenomena to basically do spy work. But Project Gateway is a sort of concrete scientific method to trigger out-of-body experiences. So they are different in terms of what the government was accomplishing with them.
I just know that was the first time that Project Stargate was mentioned, and it wasn't clarified upon. Right.
So this guy, this Joseph McMoneagle, he is known as Remote View Number 1. And that just means that he was the big boss. That he was really good at it. So in 1983, the CIA comes out with the analysis and assessment of the Gateway process. And this is a report they produced in 1983, which basically provides a scientific framework for understanding and expanding human consciousness, out-of-body experiments, and other altered states of mind. Because, keep in mind, the government had been experimenting with psilocybin and with LSD and drugs. Now,
and that's all compiled in the Gateway process.
Yes, now they're doing it with sound because of this guy's, this Monroe, who has now scientifically proven a very promising altered state of mind practice without the use of drugs.
Right.
So, to further kind of back this up, because obviously this is going to be met with some heavy amount of scrutiny.
Sure.
In 1989, a remote viewer named Angela Della Fiora, she helps track down a customs agent who's gone on the run, and she was able to pinpoint the location as somewhere in Wyoming, this place called Lowell, Wyoming, and customs apprehended him only 100 miles west of this town.
Right. So I think that they included that in this article to kind of verify that the CIA had reasons for pursuing this research because it was producing accurate results.
Yes. So, as you can imagine, they're using Project Gateway until 2003, which from 89 to 2003 is a pretty substantial jump.
It is.
This is now the CIA approves the declassification of the Gateway process report. And in 2017, which is, again, another pretty significant jump, The CIA then further declassifies 12 million pages of records detailing previously unknown parts of this program, which would eventually become known as Project Stargate.
So I think Project Stargate is like a subset of the Gateway Project, where they were using the remote viewers.
Yes.
Yeah, so this was like a huge thing that expands over 60 years.
Yeah, this was a big undertaking. Now, why the CIA decided to declassify, this is pure conspiracy, conjecture. This is, I'm wearing my tinfoil hat. But it was about 2003 to 2005 when this science-based information on transing, trans states, altered states of consciousness, out of body, that new age science started to become popular again. Now you're breaching into the territory when they're discovering the Higgs boson particles at the Super CERN in Switzerland. So I think science...
You also have to pay attention to the timeline, because it looks like a lot of the research slowed down a lot after the Cold War.
Right. So with no need to, I guess, spy on the Russians as heavily, because we're not in the Cold War anymore. America is the world superpower. Russia is sort of rebuilding itself. Vladimir Putin hasn't fully come into power at this point.
Right.
The research slowed down because we were investing our time and money into other things. September 11th, 2001 had happened. And so now we're hunting insurgents in the Middle East, and we're concerned with terrorism. So,
our focus shifted a bit, and we stopped researching this.
Right. And at this point, science is catching up with us. So, what used to be classified government science is now everybody with a science lab and an ability to read and write can basically produce these results.
Internet.
Big time.
Big time internet.
So, for those interested, the gate, just read the Vice article if you want sort of more of a detail, or just Google it yourself. I'm sure that there's plenty of information out there on it. But basically, the guy who wrote the article, he's not really findable.
Really? I hadn't looked him up. It's interesting.
Right. So he actually partnered with even Israeli scientists. And I don't know if people know this, but Israeli scientists are actually typically on the cutting edge of almost every field of science.
They're definitely more open-minded to metaphysical science.
Absolutely. So we do a lot of intelligence work with the Israeli intelligence community, and they're sharp.
I will say that I do recommend our listeners go check out this article for themselves, because it gets into a lot of very detailed, very mathematical processes that we will not be getting into.
Well, we're going to get I'm not going to get super into it, but I do want to talk a little bit about it.
We will talk a little bit about it, but this gets very in-depth with, matrices and graphs and funnels and quantum physics and things like that, frankly, I don't understand, and good luck to you if you understand it, but we can touch on it.
Well, right, so I'm not going to sit here and explain quantum physics to everybody, but...
Thank you.
I do want to talk about this, because I think it's interesting, and people are going to want to know... how did they do this? Just because this report says they did, where's their proof? So here's what's fascinating, is that they are using classical physics, which is something we talk about a lot, is that classical fundamental sciences, biology, chemistry, physics, these are all your foundation bases. So this is what they used classical physics as the foundation for explaining out-of-body phenomena and like the language of physical science. And in the Vice article, it even says that they're trying to remove the stigma of occult connotation, which is fantastic. Because that's what needs to be done, because it's not an occult practice. It is a matter of science. You're using theoretical physics, which is, things like Big Bang theory, string theory, quantum particles. They're using this to explain the time-space dimension and how human minds can expand and transcend it. They're also using quantum physics or quantum mechanics to describe the nature and function of the human consciousness. So now they're essentially breaking down your ability to think and be and the functions of your brain to a series of energy waves and frequencies and hertzes and patterns.
Right.
That's all what that means. It's actually fairly complicated, but I'll try and make this as simple as I can for people because it is very detailed, complicated. It gets deep into math.
It is. Yes, it gets very deep into the math and the science of it, which I appreciate.
Right. And then this guy also in this report includes a biomedical study so that they can study the literal physical differences and the literal physical processes happening in your body while your mind is doing whatever it's doing.
Right.
So, what is the gateway experience? Well, interesting. It is the theory that sound can alter your state of mind. So there are two ways that people achieve altered states of mind, essentially. Now, there are variations of these two things, but there are basically two major sciences in altered states of mind. The first is going to be hypnosis. Hypnosis, it's classical, and everybody knows what it is. It's sort of seen as a more hocus-pocus science, but basically, to help demystify hypnosis a lot, hypnosis is simply shutting down the left hemisphere of your brain, which is your right brain's secretary. It's basically stopping the secretary and telling her to shush and storming into the boss's office on the right side of your brain. That's what hypnosis is. And hypnosis, again, to further demystify, requires a lot of trust, requires a skilled practitioner. Hypnosis, anyone can learn how to do it. I maintain that it takes talented people to do it successfully and to do it well, because this is not just something that you can just pick up and start doing. Hypnosis is part art form, part technical science. And you really have to be in tune with yourself and with other people.
Yeah, I don't think I could ever do it.
I enjoy doing it. I really enjoy doing hypnosis a lot.
Yeah, but you're one of those kind of people that you are very in tune with both yourself and your environment. And I never know what's going on.
Should we do an episode on hypnosis? No, I can talk about it here. Or should we just do an episode on it?
No, we can do a whole episode on hypnosis.
Okay, because I have some interesting stories to share about hypnosis.
Yeah, because that's a whole metaphysical science that we should discuss, yeah.
That's a whole thing.
It's a whole episode, baby.
So, the other way that people achieve an altered state of consciousness, now this is without the use of anything. So just straight up, if you sit down, this is how you're going to do it. The other way is what's called transcendental meditation.
Yes.
It is not hypnotism. So hypnotism basically shushes the left side so that you can move into the right side. Transcendental meditation is a way where you trick your left side into letting you into your right side while your left side is still active.
That sounds harder.
It is, because a lot of people cannot achieve this in silence. I want you guys to picture a brain, right? And this is the way that this is exactly what Project Gateway did. Is picture a brain, okay? You can make it cartoony, you can make it real, I don't care. Just picture a brain.
Okay, now picturing a brain.
Picture on the left and the right side.
Okay.
I want you to imagine frequency, so like squiggly lines going into the brain.
Okay.
Like sound waves. Picture sound waves going into this brain.
Sure.
That is how it is done. Is you are in both your left and your right ear. You are assaulted, I suppose, with.
Okay.
I mean, that's really what it is. Is you are
interesting word choice.
Is you are baptized in sound waves at a very specific hertz, and this is not an immediate happening. This is prolonged exposure causes this, and the more you do this, the easier it becomes for your brain to quickly get into that. So you have to train your brain to get used to these hertz. So there's something called hertz per second, And imagine these vibrating, like, squiggly lines that move between 4 to 7 hertz per second. And they are assaulting your left and your right brain. But what's fascinating is that, and this is called a binaural beat. So when you wiggle, let's say on the left side, let's say you wiggle really fast on the left side, and you can't see it, but I'm like flapping my hand really fast.
I can see it in my mind's eye.
Right, so just imagine your hand wiggling really fast on the left side. On the right side, you will hear a completely different set of hertz. So the hand will either wiggle faster or slower than what you're wiggling on the left side.
Okay.
So you have these two different frequencied sound waves penetrating both sides of your brain at the same time. This is the crux, and what Project Gateway was the study of this. And this is what helps people basically rocket out of their bodies and do remote viewing, astral projection, lucid dreaming, all kinds of things.
So here's my question. Do you think the CIA is still using remote viewers as part of their just like staff employees?
Absolutely. I know for a fact that they are.
That's cool. That's super cool.
Yes, I can tell you, and again, this is all government, and of course, this is just a conspiracy. But I know for a fact, in work that I've done, both in the military and out of the military as a hypnotist, I know for a fact that they are still employing this research.
That's so cool.
Now, whether or not it gets used, that I obviously is conjecture and hearsay, but I do know for a fact they are still doing the research. And here's what's tragic and interesting at the same time. I don't know if you guys have heard about what's been happening to CIA operatives in the field lately. But this is kind of a big deal in intelligence communities because a lot of spies are basically getting forced to medically retire. They are being hit overseas with some unknown device that is causing
real conspiracy territory now.
Well, this isn't conspiracy. These people are fighting basically the veterans affairs. They're fighting the VA because these are veterans of the government.
Of course.
They are fighting for treatment and for their brain injury, their inexplicable brain injuries that they sustained in fields overseas of blacking out and lifelong migraines. Some have had nosebleeds with no explanation.
Oh, wow.
They are fighting
They're getting
for this
psychically attacked.
To be seen as service connected because it is spies who are in fields overseas who are specifically suffering this particular type of tragedy.
Wow.
Now, this is the conspiracy, is we don't know, Americans don't know what is going on. But the theory is that they are being hit with some sort of microwave or some sort of sound technology, and they suspect that it was developed by Israeli intelligence and then sold to Chinese or Russian governments. And now spies are being hit with this very advanced, essentially Project Gateway technology and being taken out of the field. And they're dropping like flies, too. I mean, they're blacking out for hours. They're waking up with headaches and migraines, and quite a few of them that have come back to the States have permanent migraines for the rest of their life. And these, I'm not just talking like, migraines are pretty debilitating. I mean, these people were getting like nosebleeds. Like, this is how debilitating their head injuries really have been.
That's crazy.
So this is sort of, and again, this is conjecture and hearsay, but that's sort of the possibilities of something like Project Gateway.
Yeah, so I guess I think we should leave it kind of open-ended for the audience. Like, what do you think about Project Gateway? Do you believe in the research that they were conducting? Do you believe in the conspiracy part of it? Do you believe in the science part of it?
Right. I'd be curious to know because it's definitely, there's definitely science behind it that works and has worked for thousands of years.
Right.
Maybe give it a try for yourself. If anyone is looking for a great transcendental meditative experience,
binaural beats are the way to go, man.
Using binaural beats. So one that I love to use, which it's just kind of like a fun sort of drug-induced level trip, is Hibernia Dogda. So the band's name is called Hibernia, Hibernia, and then their particular album, Dogda, it is Celtic trance music. And put that on like some wireless Bluetooth headphones, or just put it in your ears. So get it right up close to your ears. Put it up at a decent volume so you noise canceling, block everything out, and just relax to the music. And let that whole soundtrack from start to finish is like an hour and some change. Just go on the journey with them, because that is Project Gateway. That's the sort of stuff they would use in Project Gateway, is music like that.
Yeah, it's so crazy that we have just access to that on our daily basis.
Okay, I don't know if you remember this, but speaking of binaural beats, and I wanted to mention this because I still have them, and I think this is so funny. Back in the 2003, 4, 5. Yeah,
okay.
So back when I was, in my teen years, which is 2003 to 2008, but about like 04 or 05, iTunes, and iPod is huge at this point. iTunes came out with something called iDoser. So iDoser, iDoser.
What?
And they had the names of drugs: marijuana, opioids, cocaine, peyote. And it was allegedly, and I've listened to them and I didn't feel any effects, but again, this is not something that happens once. It does take time to do, so I might go back and re-listen. But allegedly, these are binaural beats and hertzes and frequencies that if you play in your ears, releases the same chemicals that those drugs do in your system, using nothing but sound.
That's the coolest thing I've ever heard. That's so wild. I've never heard of that before.
Yes, iDosers. Now, I'm sure that they have 100 other versions of that out there, but that was in 03 to 05 is when that was like a thing.
Wow. For the record, I was 6 in 05, so I didn't know anything about the effects of drugs.
Well, I had heard, and so I'd been meditating and doing hypnosis at this point as a teen, and we'll get into that in the hypnosis episode, but I'm an experienced meditator at this point, having done it most of my life and being taught to do it. So I knew how to consistently meditate. I knew how to do altered states of conscious. I knew how to trance. So I was actually really curious, and I was like, I wonder if these really do give you the drugs. But I kind of got scared because I grew up Mormon, so I was like, oh, what if it does put me under the effects of drugs? Like, what if that does happen?
Yeah, and then you're just high.
And then you're just high on accident, and you did it to yourself.
You're just a high 15-year-old.
Tripping on peyote because you listened to iDoser.
Wow.
I should go back and re-listen.
You should. We'll get a follow-up one of these days. Yeah, we would love to hear you guys hear your thoughts and opinions on these matters that we discuss in our episodes. You can do that on our Facebook page, which is at Midnight Curiosities. You can like us. You can chat. I want to eventually get to the point where we can have episode discussions every week after the episode goes up, because I would love to hear what you guys think about it. I would love to engage further in these topics. You can also follow us on Twitter at MidCuriousPod.
And Reddit. So if you guys want to get into a deep dive and discuss the science, we have a Reddit page.
We do. And you guys should join it because I feel like there's a lot of potential there.
What's the name of the Reddit page?
It's Occult Sciences.
Yes, so r/occult science.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a fun place to be. And you should be there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, anyway, this has been Midnight Curiosities. Midnight Curiosities is hosted by One Eye Oddities, a new way to see magic. If you like what we do here, do consider following us on social media. Leave a review. Tell your friends about us. We don't advertise the show in any way, so word of mouth is pretty much all we've got. And we appreciate you guys a lot for doing that.
Thanks for listening if you've stuck with us. And we hope to be turning out some more really exciting material for you as we can sort of get our groove in and deep dive science with you.
Yeah, it's going to be a great time. Well, in the meantime, I'm Curator Raquel.
And I'm Curator Warbeauty.
And don't forget to
become an oddity.